Since this month's PopCross Community Redraw episode is going to be largely focused around Kaiju, and one of the main characters of the episode will be the narrator of my Kaiju videos, who's a reboot of one of my original Multiverse Tales characters, I figured I should do at least one more Kaiju episode on the channel before we got there, and I figured why not use cryptids? I used to be obsessed with creatures like the Loch Ness Monster and Yetis when I was a kid, and after doing a whole bunch of research into SCPs for an upcoming video, I was really in that kind of headspace of creepy, mysterious creatures. So, Cryptids Does Kaiju. That's today's video. Let's get into it. Let's go. Hit like if you want. Subscribe if you feel like. But either way, enjoy the show. Today I'm going to tell you about a specific breed of kaiju. On the surface, they don't seem to have that much in common, but they're all lumped into one category because they're way more elusive than other monsters. They all seem to emit some kind of natural electronic scrambling waves, as any photographs and videos of them come out super blurry and distorted. But we know for sure that they're out there. Their destruction speaks for itself. The first beast has camped itself out in Loch Ness in Scotland. In a way, the people of the area are lucky that this thing seems to want to be left alone. It only occasionally comes onto land, and in most cases, it hides away in the waters and doesn't disturb anyone. Unless, of course, someone tries to go out onto Loch Ness. The second a creature or being or craft finds its way into the waters, the beast, codenamed Loch Lurker, ruthlessly strikes. It'll devour small boats whole, or even just smash them to pieces with a single swing of its colossal tail or claws. Or, at least it used to. It's gone quiet recently. Some people think the beast is dead because of stories told by some guy who I personally don't trust at all. This guy's Bobby Wilson, and he claims to be a surgeon turned successful English kaiju slayer. He barged into a tavern one day carrying one of the creature's scales. He swore he'd killed it with some homebrewed kaiju cannon, and it sunk back to the bottom of Loch Ness. But scans were done searching for the body and it was never found. Plus, when people asked him to try hunting down some other local kaiju with his so-called cannon, he said, nah, and just went home. I say it's a bunch of baloney. I'm still putting the Loch Lurker on my hit list, and as soon as it rears its slimy, watery head again, I'll figure out a way to really end it for good. Now, one of the tricky parts of this episode, I think, is a problem I've had with a few of the other kaiju episodes, and that's taking monsters that exist and turning them into giant versions of themselves by not just, making them bigger. I have to actually add elements and take things from existing kaiju to try and make these things feel more like gigantic, crazy versions of themselves. So with this one, I had to think about what elements I could add to make it look more monstrous. One thing I added was those kind of, mustache things that catfish have. I also added some frill things to the back of its head like I would with lots of my dragon designs. And I think adding that actually made this thing look a little bit like Fing Fang Foom from Marvel Comics. I also knew because this guy was going to be in the water, I needed to add something other than my cheap blocky buildings to make it look like he's gigantic. So I ended up adding a little boat getting shot out of the water. I had a bit of a hard time with the pose off the start, but I really like how the composition ended up coming out, with the head kind of swinging down towards the boat and the tail helping frame it a little bit. I think it worked out well. Hope you all like the results as well. Here's our Loch Ness Kaiju. For the next one, we hop back to the United States, specifically to New Jersey. The kaiju that has been seen and described by the people there sounds like something out of a nightmare, and with a quarter of Atlantic City having been wiped out in an unregistered kaiju attack, it's hard to doubt that they're true. People describe the thing as being like a mix between a horse, a bat, and Satan himself. It apparently soared down from the sky on torn up wings and smashed through everything in its wake. It rammed its horned head through skyscrapers and leveled entire blocks with its forked tail. It was a terrible day for the people, but has also in a way brought together the survivors. The boss himself even ended up writing a song about the creature. Some people in the area think this was actually another human-made kaiju, like the one that took down the Soundbreaker in Hong Kong. An eccentric CEO named Janine Leeds was investigated and was found to have a massive underground laboratory beneath the New Jersey Pine Barrens. She was funding research down there into creating kaiju to help fight back for humanity. The feds found 12 unsuccessful test subjects, but there was a 13th containment tube smashed open from the inside. They don't have definitive proof yet linking her to this specific creature, but to me it sounds like they've found their culprit. Because of its potential ties to Janine Leeds, some people have been referring to the thing as the Leeds Devil, but that's a pretty boring name for a massive flying devil horse to me, so I've logged it as the Red Wrecker. After the Wrecker attacked, it was last seen headed back to the Pine Barrens, and it's been sighted by a lot of Pineys since, so time will only tell when it'll strike again. I look forward to hunting that one down someday, because it'll give me a chance to visit my old hometown. I've been in Australia most of my life now, but I did grow up in Philly. Will be an easy jump back to the old stomping grounds after I slay the Red Wrecker. Now for two of the kaiju in this episode, there was a lot more creative freedom I felt like I could take with the designs, because with things like the Loch Ness Monster and with Yetis, it's pretty clear what people think they look like. There's not a ton of variation in terms of how different artists render what those creatures look like, but in terms of the Jersey Devil, so many different people have done so many different takes on it. I was pulling some inspiration from some other renderings that I really liked, but was also trying to make this look like my own version, and of course, like a giant kaiju version. I think of the 4 drawings in this episode, this one looks the least like a gigantic monster, but overall I'm still very happy with the design. For the tail, I was actually taking a bit of inspiration from scorpions, just to make it look a little bit more menacing, and I guess it kinda ended up looking a little bit Godzilla-like too. I really like the idea of making the wings kinda tattered, because I was reminded how much I like that look when I was doing my Dobby dragon from the My Hero Academia Villains as Dragons episode. Having torn up wings would obviously make flying harder, but, I really like the look, and I'm designing giant monsters. I can take a bit of creative liberty with reality. Anyway, it was super fun dipping into the lore for this one, and I hope you all like the Red Wrecker. As usual, all the art from this episode will be up as posters on my Teespring store. By the time you're watching this, they'll probably be in the little bar beneath this video, but if not, I'll put links in the pinned comment. Plus, I got lots of other fun stuff up on my Teespring store, like ink bundles and, stuff like this shirt, with tons of PopCross Studios art on it. Once again, linked in the bar beneath this video. But for now, back into more kaiju cryptids. Let's go. For the next beast, we head out to Nepal for a monster that has been hiding out in the Himalayas, and luckily seems to be one of the few natural kaiju on our side. Or for the most part, at least. It spends most of its time avoiding people and creatures in the mountains, but on few occasions when nearby towns were attacked by other monsters, it descended and fought them off. And man, can this thing fight when it wants to. The monster is a giant ape with white fur and 6 horns sticking out of its head. It was also apparently able to spawn ice shards from its arms to give itself a little extra punch. I've taken to calling the thing the Abominape. This guy may actually be part of another subclass of ape-like kaiju, because a bunch of creatures like it have been spotted around the world. A similar one with darker fur was described in the forests near the Canada-American border, but again, the footage and photos are too unclear to give us any sure evidence. Now, just because this thing has fought for us doesn't mean it's totally safe for humans to be around. It seems to be very territorial, as there are accounts of people hiking up near its home and being attacked. A party of kaiju researchers went out to find the creature to try and study it, but they never returned, and all around their destroyed camp were colossal footsteps matching that of the big ape. It's entirely possible the thing only attacked other kaiju because it wanted to be the alpha of its area, not because it actually cares about our safety. I don't actively have this thing on my hit list, but you better believe I'm keeping an ear out for any more reports. If this thing goes too far, I won't hesitate to hunt it down. Now, when I was doing some extra research into Yetis and Abominable Snowman, one thing I noticed was they're actually very often described as having brown and black fur, and it's more of a pop culture depiction for them to have white fur. But I figured if I gave this thing brown fur, it would look too much like King Kong. And personally, I really like the idea of them having white fur, because it would mean that they could hide into the snow more easily, and it would make sense why people don't see them as much. For the design of my kaiju version, I really wanted to make sure that I had a little bit more color variety though, so I didn't just cover the whole thing in white fur. I left the stomach and chest exposed kinda like a gorilla, and then I also left some areas on the biceps and lower legs and feet exposed. And then I liked the idea of giving this thing a little bit of extra power with the ice shards that it could spawn. Figured that would be a cool thing to add for a kaiju version of these creatures. And again, it would add a bit more color variety because the ice would have a little bit of a bluish kind of glow to it. I think this one might be my favorite design of the episode, but doesn't quite take my favorite drawing because, you know, the pose is just a little bit whatever. I think I might still like the Loch Ness one better. Anyway, let's take a look at the finished version of our Abominape. The final one for today is a lot higher up my kill list because it's right here on my home continent, lurking around somewhere waiting to strike. First reports came in from an aboriginal reserve of some kind of water beast that rose up from the waters of a billabong and stormed through the area, devouring any life that crossed its sight. There were some inconsistencies with its description at first. Some had claimed that it looked like a giant starfish, while others said that it had a hugely long neck and a tiny head. A few other descriptions were told, but over the next few months there were more attacks, and the descriptions slowly became more consistent. The creature that I now refer to as the Billabeast was like a watery hound, somewhat resembling a massive sea leopard. It was amphibious and had tufts of brown fur. It seemed to focus on eating, and it'll eat anything that moves. It always stays near waterways, seemingly to ensure easy escape, because they're quick on land, but in water, apparently they're crazy fast. They've got giant flippers for their back feet that shoot them through the water like some of the fastest kaiju out there. Because a lot of information on these things hasn't been confirmed, it's another one of these cases that's hard to plan against, but my best guess so far is that it could be killed similarly to how I plan on killing the tidal jaw when I eventually come up against it. Find a way to lure it out of waters towards a desert area, then hope that drying it out in the sun weakens it enough to stomp it out for good. Now this one by far I felt like I had the most creative freedom with, because the descriptions of what bunyips look like really do vary a lot. By the way, that's what this is, a bunyip. It's probably the least well known of the cryptids I was working with, at least in North America where I live, but I figure since this character lives in Australia, I should do at least one native Australian cryptid. And I've always thought bunyips were pretty cool. I'd considered working one into the Monster Continent, the old Multiverse Tales book that this narrator's from, but I don't think I ended up doing it. Maybe I referenced it, I don't really remember, it was ages ago that I wrote that. With this one, funny enough, I was kind of channeling some of the elements that I worked into the dragon that I designed for my Digimon episode, the Vulcan Hammertail, I think it was called. I really liked the walrusy kind of look, and this creature was often described as having big tusks, or drawings and renderings of it showed it having big tusks. So I worked that in. I had a little bit of fur on it, but also had some areas that were like a little bit more matted fur, almost like an otter would have or something like that, so it doesn't even really look that much like fur. Also, the face, I think, ended up looking a little bit like Scooby-Doo, funny enough. That wasn't really intentional, but I think that just comes across in the coloring stage. And overall, I think this is definitely the weirdest one, because I was working in lots of different design elements from different ideas of what bunyips might look like. So I think that definitely makes it the most unique one. I don't know if it's the best one, but I think this one definitely stands out from the drawings in this video. Anyway, I hope you all like the final kaiju of our episode, our Bunyip Kaiju. Here he is. Quite happy with this one. I don't know if I like it quite as much as the Ben 10 Kaiju episode, but I do think I like it a bit more than the Pokemon Kaiju episode. And of course, doing this got me super excited for the Community Redraw episode, the Kaiju Slayer. That's coming out 4 episodes from now on April 30th. I haven't looked at any of the submissions yet, because I like to wait until all of them are in, but I trust that, as usual, there's tons of awesome stuff submitted already. But anyway, if you're new to the channel and you enjoyed this, make sure to check out some of my other monster videos. As I said, I've got 2 other Kaiju videos in this series. I've got tons of videos of turning things into dragons, and lots of superheroes and Transformers and other kind of stuff. But anyway, everybody, that's all for today. I'm Christian Pearson. This has been PopCross Studios, home of the nerdiest art videos on YouTube. All you SCP fans should get hyped for Monday's video because I'm finally doing an SCP-focused episode, and I hope to see you all there. Goodbye, everybody.